In reality, yoga was created by and for men, which is great, but women have different needs.
You're watching the Wow podcast. I'm Jennifer Robin. This conversation is for informational purposes only and is not medical advice. Full disclosure is in the description. Today on the show, we have Deborah Charnes. She's a bilingual certified yoga therapist and the author of From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram. Welcome, Deborah.
Hi there. So glad to join you.
Tell us how your early health challenges influenced your approach to wellness.
I'm big on talking about gratitude and a positive attitude. So when I was a kid, I probably was not a happy camper, and I probably had a lot of negative thoughts. And when I was just an adolescent, I had severe back pain and severe stomach problems. My parents sent me to specialists, and fortunately, those specialists did not recommend surgery or drugs. So I incorporated lifestyle changes from the time I was very young. And one of them, for example, was putting a piece of wood underneath your mattress, to have a much firmer mattress. I can sleep on a floor. I'm fine with a hard surface because from the time I was a kid, I was taught that was better for my back. And I also remember I had to work for my back on postural alignment. And as part of that, I had to strengthen my core. I had to do different exercises and the way I stood or sat to improve my posture. Both my back and my stomach are chronic issues that will be with me forever. But they have not had any negative side effects for a very, very long time because of the way I manage them. I recommend for my clients all the time that they do food diaries because I do believe that I'm sensitive to different food groups as opposed to having anything severe. So basically, from the time I was an adolescent, I was very focused on my diet and in my lifestyle. Most people don't know what a yoga therapist is. And I always say it's more therapy than yoga because the physical component of yoga is just one aspect.
That's not common knowledge. I just learned that recently, so I know that as well. Want to talk a little bit more about just a brief overview of what it is then, if it's not just the poses that we traditionally think of?
Well, first of all, in the Western world, the concept of yoga oftentimes is fast-paced, heat-building body exercise. And I always say yoga is not about doing a handstand or about doing pretzel poses. And the vinyasa style of yoga has become so popular in the West. But true yoga is about being comfortable in your seat. And so true yoga, there are many different components of yoga, but it is lifestyle and breathwork and meditation. Meditation does not mean you're sitting on the floor quiet for an hour.
Hallelujah. I just talked with someone about that recently. So go ahead. I'd like to hear your interpretation, but some of us can't sit still that long. So
yes. And we have to do what is right for our bodies and for what is right for our minds. And in Ayurveda, we talk about different constitutions that are innate with you. And some people's constitutions, are kind of ADHD type A prone. Now,
I don't know anybody like that. That is me totally, 100%.
Well, it is so common in the West, and part of it also is the way our culture pushes people to be. But from an Ayurvedic standpoint, you are born with a certain type. Now, that does not mean that I can't sit quiet and meditate like the Buddha for an hour and a half. But there are so many other ways that I enjoy meditating or being mindful. And my favorite ones, if you're interested, my favorite
Oh, I'm
ones
absolutely, yeah.
are jigsaw puzzles, which I've been doing jigsaw puzzles since I was a kid, and I love doing.
Me too. I wonder what I'm going to learn today. Geesh.
And two other ones that I love are coloring books. I find weeding or gardening is also very meditative. In general, it's about a mindful attitude, which ideally you turn on every day throughout the day.
Yeah, that's a lot easier to grasp than having to sit still. And for me and a lot of people I know, it's the advice that we've heard that you have to shut off the brain. And some of us really, 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 really can't do that. Doesn't matter how many hours we try to do it.
Well, that's why to me, it's not about shutting it off, but it's about focusing it. And that's why coloring book or jigsaws or weeding, you're focusing on your task, and hopefully your mind isn't wandering as much on, oh, what am I going to wear tomorrow? Or what am I going to eat today?
Absolutely. Let's talk about just an overview of what you consider to be the benefits of what you're calling a yogic diet.
I understand how, from a marketing standpoint, our Western society teaches people go to the drive-through, pick up your food, or stick it in the microwave, stuff it in your mouth as you're driving or as you're watching TV or as you're doing whatever million other things that you do when you multitask. And did our grandparents cook and eat that way, or great-great-grandparents? No. I have great respect for people that have their own gardens or do foraging and that whole slow cooking concept. But what's so important is to know the source. And I've worked not only for fast food companies, but I have in the marketing role worked for many different restaurateurs. I owned my own restaurant, but it's just the lifestyle of quick 60 seconds, your meal is done. Maybe 2 minutes, you've finished eating it. And that is not healthy for so many reasons. We need to be more mindful about what we consume, how we consume, why we consume it. So that is very important. I'm very much grounded in research and in reading from other people who have specialty focus areas and PhDs. And my book, From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram, is based on life lessons from a dozen of my gurus around the world. So mindfulness is one component. A true yogi follows a vegetarian diet. And I don't tell my clients that they must be vegetarian, but I tell them they need to be mindful about what they eat and the source of what they're eating. But from a yogic perspective, the first rule of law in yoga is do no harm. When we talk about do no harm, it's do no harm to yourself. Eating fast food 3 times a day is definitely not healthy for you.
Yep.
And again, if you look back at how your ancestors ate with slow, mindful preparedness, and then the other thing that is so common in many cultures is to cook with love and to serve with love. So those are healthier regardless of what you eat. From a yogic perspective, do no harm to any other living being. Everybody can take that differently. I personally don't eat animal products because of that. What I will tell people is if they're going to eat eggs, eat free-range eggs. I've lived in multiple other countries, and it was common for people to have their chickens, and they would have fresh eggs from their chickens, or they would have their cows, and they would milk their cows and have fresh milk and make their own cheese. And to me, that is a much healthier approach for many reasons. And traditionally, they are hopefully treating those animals without harm and
Yeah.
with love. So that's one thing. And then the third component about do no harm is do no harm to the planet.
Mm.
And that's a big, I mean, we have done so much harm to the planet for so many reasons. And there are so many things about our diet that do harm to the planet. The third is from the Ayurvedic principle of everyone is different.
Mm.
What you need and what's best for you may not be what's best for me. My mom thought that everyone should drink a quart of milk a day because that was what she was taught back then.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived in the Midwest where there's a lot of dairy. My mother was lactose intolerant. And traditionally, lactose intolerance is with age. So she would still drink that quart of milk a day, but she would drink lactose-free milk. But from an Ayurvedic perspective, I briefly mentioned earlier that you are born with your constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And then life, the time of the day, the time of the season, what's going on around you affect it. But there are some constitutions that, for example, do very well with dairy. Other constitutions don't do very well with dairy. Some people need cooling foods. And I'll just give an example of peppermint. Peppermint is has cooling attributes. Other people need heating food. And when I say heating, I don't mean the temperature, but let's say spicy foods.
Does that relate at all to the TCM, traditional Chinese medicine of heat and cool?
So I find so many similarities between the elements in TCM and in Ayurveda. It is not identical, but there are so many similarities. So one of the similarities is the fire element.
Okay.
So in TCM, they will say you have too much fire or not enough fire. An entire chapter in my book is about digestive fire. And what most people don't recognize, but TCM does, is that if you have too much or not enough fire, it's not just about digestion. It's not just about heating up your body and not having to I'm wearing a sweater because I don't have a lot of fire. If you don't have enough digestive fire, it can even affect your emotional states. And so emotional issues also, it basically says that the digestive fire is your engine. And if it's not properly tuned, you're going to have issues.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's a lot to digest. Ever listen to a podcast with great content, but wish the audio quality was better? Even with expensive equipment, audio recordings pick up everything. Appliance hums, barking dogs, notification beeps, and when listeners are wearing headphones, they hear all of it. Excessive ums and repetitive words can be really irritating too. Would you rather hear audio like this?
No matter how much somebody cares and how well-meaning they are.
Or polished like this?
No matter how much somebody cares and how well-meaning they are.
Every podcast deserves the spa treatment. With balanced audio levels and distractions removed, you can hear the difference immediately. Know a podcaster who'd appreciate a fresh perspective? I offer free podcast consultations where I share specific ideas to improve their show. Send them to podcastspa.com. That's podcastspa.com. Your referrals help support this show. I appreciate you. I think the listeners know I do follow a vegetarian diet, but when you're saying about the chickens, we have a flock of 7 right now, and I will tell you, my husband and my daughter-in-law have named them all, so I think they're pretty pampered. What's a simple way we can get started helping our digestion?
Well, in my book, I have 5 easy tips for everything that I recommend. One of them, I'll show you because I have them right here, is you can make your own little herbal teas. This is something that you can make so inexpensively. I put it in a little mesh bag, so I think it's cute, and I can give it to people. And this is appropriate for people of all constitutions. And it is so easy. I have the recipe in my book, but I'll tell you, it's just basically fennel seeds, coriander seeds, and cumin seeds. And so this you can just make super simple and it's good for everybody. I have another one, which is the same, but I add cloves. I love the smell. I love the flavor. But I will mention that cloves are not for every constitution. I always have my homemade herbal teas on an empty stomach in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also great to have, before you go to bed. I mean, there are so many different times to have it. And that's just really simple and it costs almost nothing.
Nice. Definitely easy, accessible to all of us. So how do you use diet as a therapeutic tool when you're working with someone to try to figure out some of their chronic issues?
All of yoga therapists come to yoga therapy with different backgrounds. And many yoga therapists might be MDs, they might be mental health care practitioners, they might have specialty focus areas such as Parkinson's or heart health. So everyone is different. My approach is, first and foremost, we have to be balanced. And there are many different ways of getting balance. Needles, with acupuncture. I've been having acupuncture done on myself for almost 40 years. From a food perspective, one of the easiest ways to get balance is with your diet. I know that my entire life, I know what my constitution was at conception, and I know how it alters. And so if I feel it's getting out of whack, one of the easiest quick fixes, doesn't mean it's going to fix it completely, but it'll help, is through diet. And, I'm not talking about counting calories. I'm talking about what spices may be better to incorporate or to remove. And it's more than spices, but that's just something easy that you can add.
One thing I did want to bring up, I know you offered some free Spanish language yoga classes for women and children, and I saw the pictures and it was just wonderful. I didn't know if you wanted to share anything about that experience.
I love traveling and I have lived in different countries. The first time I taught in Spanish for a free class, it was to cancer survivors in Dallas. And then through my travels, I taught in Costa Rica and in Nicaragua and Belize. And our Western expectations are, I think, ridiculous. You should be able to do yoga anytime, any place, anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need yoga attire. You don't need a yoga mat. In the schools in Costa Rica and in Belize in particular, we were on concrete floors and we just moved the desks aside in small spaces. And of course, no AC and hot, humid. And so that was fun.
Nice. Getting back to your book, what was the prompt within you to decide to write that? Where'd that come from?
Yoga therapy is traditionally working one-on-one. So how many people I'm positively affecting is going to be a very small universe.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I became a yoga therapist, I started to offer therapeutic workshops. And the difference between yoga therapy and therapeutic workshops is we take common threads. So for example, I do gutsy yoga, which is for digestive disorders, or dem bones, which is for bone health. But is it rheumatoid arthritis or is it osteoporosis? Those are very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
Digestive health, is it Crohn's disease or is it ulcers? Again, very different aspects. So from a therapeutic workshop perspective, I try to help a wider variety, but it's not the one-on-one.
Yeah.
So that was my approach. And then I was like, well, if I do a book, I can reach so many more people. Well, one of the practices in yoga is to give thanks to all the teachers who have shaped you along your way. And that is something that I think is a beautiful practice. I think everyone should do that. And so I thought, if I write this book, I can honor some of the most important teachers in my life So there are 12 chapters, and each chapter is based on a different guru of mine around the world. And then the 13th, kind of an extra, which is my mom.
Mm.
And so I acknowledge my mom.
Beautiful. I also learned from your website that you are someone like me in the fact that you just love to learn. Like, I will never stop learning. There's always something new. Do you want to talk about some of the certifications?
Sure. And most of them are not even on my website.
Right. Well, because when you're a lifelong learner, they keep accumulating, right?
I always feel there's so much more to learn. Some of the things that I have great respect for are Reiki. I am a Reiki master, also reflexology.
Mm-hmm.
And I have studied both traditional reflexology and also Marma. Marma is Vedic reflexology. As a yoga teacher, we are trained teeny bit about yoga for pregnant women.
Mm-hmm.
And then in yoga therapy, I was taught more. And then my daughter was pregnant, and there were hurdles and there were different things to watch out for.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt, oh my God, there is so much I don't know. Now, I want to mention, I've been doing yoga all my life. I came to yoga on my own, not knowing what yoga was, but I instinctively knew that breath work and meditation were the only things that helped my stomach. So I found those. I'd never heard of breath work or meditation, but I just instinctively, I found them. My daughter was born, almost 40 years ago, and I did all components of yoga throughout the pregnancy. So learning more about what's right
Mm-hmm.
and wrong, I was like, I shouldn't have done any of that. And so I have taken more than 150 continuing ed credit hours, all about women's reproductive health, prenatal, postpartum, yoga for fertility. And I created workshops and classes that were female-centric.
Yeah.
Because in reality, yoga was created by and for men, which is great. But women have different needs. And in our society, we think we have to do what the guys do. We don't want to be holding ourselves back. We want to be super women. And I learned that super women need to chill out. They need to get grounded, and they need a more cooling practice. I found that there are so many commonalities between what a pregnant woman should do, what a woman on her period should do, and what a menopausal or postmenopausal woman should do. So those 3 times in your life, we need to do things differently.
Interesting. And I never thought about yoga being started by a man. When you said that, it was like totally new information. I'm sure I knew it, but that's interesting.
And in fact, women didn't practice yoga until, I don't want to say my generation, maybe my mom's generation. There is one book which I recommend called The Goddess Pose. And the goddess pose is a physical practice, a physical posture. But it's talking about one of the first women in yoga.
Okay. Getting back to the constitutions that you were talking about earlier in our conversation, what happens when those are out of whack?
We are supposed to be balancing ourselves with everything we do. And going back to a diet, little children, and I'm talking about very young, like under a year, they supposedly eat what they need to eat. If you're not giving them candy, but if you give them, let's just say, an apple or a piece of bread or a piece of chicken, they supposedly instinctively pick what their bodies need.
Oh, that is so cool.
And unfortunately, as we develop, society teaches you have to eat a certain foods in a certain way, and then you develop cravings. And the more you give in to those cravings, it's just like with alcohol or drugs. The more you give in, the harder it is to pull back. And so it's very easy to be addicted to sugars. It's very easy to be addicted to soft drinks or caffeine, which is considered a drug, carbs, cheese. So there are so many different foods that we can become addicted to. And if you eat too much of them, it puts you out of balance. Everything is based on balance. I had a shoulder injury for almost a year. I did do physical therapy and I got non-traditional treatment. And finally, I did 3 different sets of acupuncture and my shoulder is 100% fine.
Oh, wow.
It reset, it rebalanced. So sometimes we really need something to work those meridians and to unblock whatever is blocking us. I was taught to lead yin yoga as if it were needle-less acupuncture. So when I do yin yoga, I'm stimulating my meridians and I'm unblocking the meridians.
Oh, that is very cool.
Yeah. I've been to India 3 times. One time when I was there, I just knew something was wrong. And so I went to an Ayurvedic pharmacy and I got different things. I knew something was getting off balance and I knew exactly what it was. I knew it was my constitution. I believe it had to do with anxiety, which triggered imbalance in my constitution. I got back to the US and I still just wasn't my normal self. And I was still doing as much as I could based on the Ayurveda. And I went to the doctor. They did all sorts of tests and everything came out negative. And as soon as I got acupuncture, boom, I was pretty much fine.
Fantastic. It's amazing how these meridian wellness therapies work. What are the different ways that somebody could work with you?
Well, the book, of course, is the easiest. There's something in there for everyone. So one chapter is about anxiety, PTSD, and depression. Another one is about positive mental attitudes. There's another chapter that's all about back and pain health. The other thing that I recommend are my on-demand workshops.
Awesome. You can find her at DeborahCharnes.com. That is DeborahCharnes.com. Deborah, thank you so much for being here and spending time with me today.
It's been a joy. Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was. Just drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more.